In the last lesson, we looked at how to simplify rational expressions. We also talked about what to kind of look for when it comes to rational expressions, what they mean, and all that good stuff. Today, we're going to talk about how to multiply and divide with rational expressions, kind of an important skill, especially as you get ready for Algebra 2. So what I want you to do right now is go ahead and pause the video, and when you're ready, you're going to unpause and see the solutions for these 4 warm-up questions. So go ahead and pause now. So on these, on number 1, you are distributing that 2x squared to everything inside. So we have 2x squared times x is 2x to the third. Then 2x squared times 3 is 6x squared. Number 2, double distributing, right? So we're going to do x times 3x and x times 7. So that's what gives us this. And then we're also going to do 5 times 3x, or minus 5, so negative 5 times 3x and negative 5 times 35. So that's what gives us this part. Then we need to combine our x's, so we get 3x squared minus 8x minus 35. Down here, we're going to distribute the 3x to everything inside the parentheses. So that would be 3x cubed, 6x squared, and 6x. Finally, over here, we're kind of doing the quotient property. So 12 and 40, we can kind of treat that as 12/40ths. So what we're going to do is we're going to simplify that by dividing top and bottom by 4. And when I do that, I get 3/10. Okay? Then I have x to the 12th on top, x to the 5th on bottom. I have more x's on top. When I cancel out x to the 5th on bottom, that leaves x to the 7th on top. With the y's, though, notice how I have y to the 15th on bottom. So I have more y's on bottom than I have on top. That leaves y to the 5th on bottom, so this is your final term right here. Okay. Multiplying rational expressions is very similar to multiplying fractions, and dividing rational expressions is very similar to dividing fractions as well. So you're going to use some of the same skills you learned back in Chapter 7 and Chapter 8. We're going to be doing some factoring today, and we're going to be multiplying, we're going to be distributing some things today. So you'll notice the rule here. If you have A, B, C, and D, now this is key. They have to be non-zero polynomials. Because remember, if you have 0, if one of those is especially B or D is a 0 polynomial, that can really mess up and give you a 0 in the denominator, which would be no solution. You're going to get into that a lot more when you get into Algebra 2 and pre-calculus and calculus, some of those courses down the road. But this rule only applies if those are non-zero polynomials. So three rules here. And you notice there are some similarities to multiplying with fractions, particularly with steps 2 and 3. Simplify if you can. So remember, like if I got 2 and 6 here in this example, I can simplify 2 and 6. I can make that this 2 become 1 and this 6 become 3. Now, the other thing we want to do is factor, because watch what happens when I factor this term right here, this 3a plus 9. Think about what I can pull out of there. I can pull out a GCF. So I've got, this thing becomes a plus 3, and now it's over 1, because I factored that 2, times 3 over, and then I've got, if I pull the GCF out of this bottom binomial here, I get 3 times a plus 3. Well, notice what I got up here. I have a plus 3 up here, and I have a plus 3 down here. I can cross simplify those, because this would cross out that. And notice I also have 3 over 3 now. So I can also simplify that. So I could even go like this, and then nothing's left. Well, not nothing, because when I do a plus 3 divided by a plus 3, I get 1. When I do 3 divided by 3, I get 1. So my answer is 1. Little note on your answers, just a matter of form. Whenever you're writing your answers down, always put, pardon my handwriting, always put your coefficients first whenever you're writing your final answer. Not an issue here on number 1, but as you can see as we go down, it will become more of an issue. Okay, number 2. Here, let's see what we can simplify, okay? So I can take, and I can simplify this 12 with this 3, right? I can divide both of them by 3. So 12 becomes 4, and 3 becomes 1. Then I've got 5, and 15 can simplify, and I get 15 is 3, 1 becomes 5. Now, from here, we're working with, so I simplified all my coefficients. From here, I'm just working with A's, B's, and C's. So you can either multiply and then simplify, or we can simplify right here. It's kind of your call. Let me show you what it looks like if we multiply before we simplify. So with the top, I've got 4 times 3, which is 12. And then I've got a squared. And then for my b's, I've got b cubed here and b here. So if I did b cubed times b, that's b to the 4th. And then I've got this extra c squared here, so c squared. So that's my numerator, and my denominator, 1 times 1 is 1, right? And then I've got a is all alone by itself, b squareds are all alone by itself, and then c times c is c squared. So this would be a, b squared, c squared. Well, now we're not done because we haven't simplified yet. Notice how I've got c's on top and bottom. I've got b's on top and bottom. I got a's on top and bottom. So let's simplify what we can. Notice how the c's are just going to go away because c squared divided by c squared is 1. With the a's, I've got, well, first let me just go to this because we're going to write coefficients first. 12, there's nothing to simplify with 12, so I could just copy that down over here. For my a's, I've got a squared on top and a on bottom. So my a's, I'm going to cancel out this guy. There's more a's on the top, so this just becomes a to the 1st. With the b's, I've got more b's on top. So b to the 4th divided by b squared is b to the 4 minus 2, so this is b squared. And so my final answer is 12 times ab squared. Okay? Moving along. Why don't you pause the video and go ahead and try number 3, just like we tried this. It's kind of like number 2. So pause and hit resume whenever you're ready to see if you're right. So this one shows us we're not always going to be able to simplify. On here, there were no coefficients that I could simplify. There were no x's in the denominator. There were no y's in the numerator. So x squared times x is x cubed. Y cubed times y squared is y to the 5th. 5 times 3 gives me the 15. 2 times 2 gives me the 4. That's my final answer right there. Moving on to number 4. For this one, remember with fractions, whenever you multiply by a whole number, you have to make this be over 1. This is one where, in order to simplify this, we're going to have to factor first. So you'll notice on the top here, I can pull a GCF out of 3m plus 6. On the bottom, I've got m squared minus 4m minus 12. So this one, we're going to have to think about how that would factor. So if I just write m minus 5 in my numerator, bring it along for the ride. In the denominator, since I've got a trinomial down there, I'm going to factor that. The last sign in the trinomial is a minus sign. That means I know I've got plus minus for my signs because a positive times a negative would give me that negative 12. Factors of 12 that would add together to equal negative 4. Well, let's think about that. We've got 4 and 3. We've got 12 and 1. None of those would add together to be negative 4, but 6 and 2. But I want it to be negative, so it would be m minus 6 and m plus 2 times. Now, let's not forget about factoring the other side. The denominator of my other side is 1, but I need to factor that 3m plus 6. So, to do that, I can do this 3 times m plus 2. Well, then look at what's going on here. I've got m plus 2 down here in this denominator and up here in this numerator. So if I were to multiply this, I would get 3 times m minus 5 m plus 2, right? The denominator, I'm just going to rearrange this just to make it look a little bit more sensical. I've got m minus 6 and m plus 2. Times 1 is just the same thing. So notice I have m plus 2 over m plus 2. Those cancel out. And my final answer is 3 times the quantity m minus 5 all over m minus 6. So I want you to pause the video and try these 3 problems here. I'm gonna when you come back, when you hit play, I'll have the solutions, and then you can, if you're having trouble with coming up with any of these, you can ask your teacher for help. Okay, so very quickly running through these because I've got a bunch of markings there. It's kind of hard to make out. Number 5. What I did first was I pulled a 4D out of this one. So I had 4D equals D squared plus 1. And the 2F I just brought over here. I've got 16F down here. And then I've got 7F I pulled out of this one. And then I left D squared plus 1 as the other factor. The D squared plus 1's cancel. I've got, what did I do? I did a 2 cancels the 16, right? It makes the 2 becomes a 1, the 16 becomes an 8. Then I did the 4 cancels with that 8 and becomes a half. So I kind of just worked my way through. You can see how I was using different colors to do that. F cancels the F, and notice what's left. I've got a D up here and a 7F over here, so there's my answer down there. Number 6, after I factor, the first part here, this n squared plus 4, I can pull an n out of, okay? And then I've got n squared plus 8n plus 16 comes to n plus 4 times n plus 4. So notice one of those n plus 4s can cancel here. The n squared minus 3n minus 10 factors out to n minus 5 times n plus 2. So that factors out the n minus 5. For a final answer, if we look at what's left, on top is n plus 4, on bottom is n times n plus 2. Down below, the first factor here I can pull out is p from down below, so p times p plus 2, and then my top is going to be p plus 2 times p minus 5. And I just left the bottom alone because you see what happens? These p plus 2's cancel, and there's nothing else that would come out of here. So this would be p plus 4 times p minus 5, and then this on the bottom, p times quantity p squared plus 16. So that's how multiplication works. Pull out any factors you can, simplify what you can, and then multiply the tops, multiply the bottoms, just like you do with fractions. Dividing is just like dividing with fractions. In fact, you'll notice A, B, C, D, again, non-zero. If we're doing A over B divided by C over D, you remember this? We keep, we switch, we flip. So that works with these expressions as well. So all we're going to do, and then we're just going to do the same thing for multiplying. We're going to keep this first fraction, 3 over x squared. We're going to switch to multiplication, and we're going to flip that last one. So the last one would then be x minus 5 over x cubed. And then we look for what we can simplify. On this one, we can't really simplify anything because everything's factored. So this would be 3 times x minus 5 over x to the 5th. So keep, switch, flip. So let's try that on this one. Notice I'm not even going to simplify before I do keep, switch, flip. So on this one, let's do, we'll keep this, we'll switch this, we'll flip this. Switch colors. So I've got 18VW squared all over 6V times 3V squared x to the 4th all over 2W to the 4th x. I'm going to simplify before I even look at cross-simplifying here. So I think that's a little easier. 18 and 6 simplified to 3 over 1. I've got a v on bottom and a v on top. So all I'm left with in this first one is 3w squared. On this far one, let's see, I can make this become x cubed, and this x is gone. So my new multiplication problem is 3w squared, again, over 1 times 3v squared x to the 3rd over 2w to the 4th. Now, what can I simplify? Well, I've got these w squareds I can take out, so this becomes w squared down here. Don't see anything else because there's no more v's, there's no more x's that I can simplify with, and w's are already all together. So, finishing this off then, 3 times 3 is 9. V squared x to the 3rd all over 2w squared. Your turn. I want you to pause the video, and remember we're just doing keep, switch, flip. I want you to try number 10 and resume when you want to check your answer. So the first thing I did on number 10 is I made this into a fraction, put it over 1, so then I could keep, I could switch, I could flip. Then we go into factoring. X squared minus x, I can pull an x out, so that's x times x minus 1. And then I put my x plus 2 down there because that's already factored. X squared plus 2x minus 3, that becomes x minus 1, x plus 3, and the x minus 1s can cancel out. So on the top, I got x times 1, which is x, and then on the bottom, x plus 2 times x plus 3. So there you have it. That is how you multiply and divide rational numbers. Again, very similar to what we've done in the past, the fractions. The only difference is there's a lot more to work with here. So you're kind of combining fraction operations and exponent rules and factoring and all your polynomial information, all the stuff you've done throughout the year and in 7th grade, and kind of putting it all together here. So that is that. Go ahead and start your homework.